Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Chris Morsley. Chris is an executive coach who has coached Olympic athletes, celebrities, and hundreds of public figures on how to increase charisma and command attention. He is a former actor turned coach who has a passion to help leaders learn the art of expressing themselves in a way that makes a positive impact. Now, I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about what it takes for leaders to make a more positive impact on their teams, their companies, and the world around them. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's a real pleasure and definitely an honor to be here. Really appreciate it.
It's great to meet you. Great to have you on the show. And I'm really excited to dive into your experience and what you teach leaders, because I think it's something that's really valuable and we don't talk about it enough. So let's dive into it real quick. Former actor turned leadership coach. Explain a little bit about the acting career and where you got your passion for wanting to help leaders. Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, look, I'll try and make this story short, but yeah. So I dreamed of being an actor from the age of about 14 years old. I stood on stage, felt more at home on than off, on stage than off, because I was a pretty introverted kid and shy, but stood on that stage and I felt great. It was really weird. Anyway, I became an actor. I went to a good drama school and I was an actor for 10 years. And as far as actors would say, I was successful because for those 10 years I pretty much worked all the time. I did a lot of great theater, which I enjoyed, and TV mainly, so theater and TV and some films as well. But so I was never really out of work, but I have to say it's kind of lucky, right? It's lucky. So, for example, and I'll sort of tell you why I changed careers. I was standing on a corner of a suburban street, and this kid was being dropped off by a taxi, and the kid was too young to be taking a taxi by himself. And I realized that it was his father dropping him off, and I noticed the driver of the taxi was actually a very famous actor. This guy had been a household name for probably 15 years in Australia. And here he was driving a cab. He's probably in his mid-40s. And that triggered me to think, okay, he's now in his mid-40s and he has to drive a cab to survive, to take his kid to school. And I look back on my career and went, okay, in the last 10 years, let's say, what have I done that really that gave me a sense of meaning, that fulfilled me my original dream? And I even though I'd worked so much, I could really only tell you that it was about a year and a half of incredible theater and a particular film that I did, a miniseries that I did, and a few things that were really powerful. The rest of it was not as powerful and really didn't fulfill the dream. So I thought, I not only am I not fulfilling meaning in my life doing this thing that I thought was my destiny, but I might be out of work by the time I'm in my mid-40s.
Yeah.
And so I quit. I literally quit. It was, I didn't tell anybody in the industry. I just turned my back on it.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny, actually. 5 years after that, it took 5 years, but 5 years after that, a casting agent calls me up and says, "Hey, Chris, is that Chris Morsley?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm at home." And she said, "I've been looking for you for ages. You're not anywhere." I'm just doing my own business, and basically told her I'd quit acting. And she said, "Oh, will you do one more job?" So I did this one more job on television, then I got another one. So 5 years later, after absolutely nothing, I had these two really cool acting jobs, and then carried on with my new career.
So yeah, you can't. It's not like not like a normal job where you can show up and say, "You know what, I quit, I'm done." Because you're working for all sorts of different people, right? So
yeah,
the possibility of more opportunities coming your way is yeah, that's interesting. And why? Where did the idea of working with Olympic athletes, celebrities, leaders, Where did that come from? Was it the
Mm.
acting, where what you saw and learned as an actor that you felt like you could help these type of people in these very forward facing type roles?
Yeah, well, I didn't plan to work with those particular people, but I remember someone saying to me when I was in this sort of transitional phase, he said, if you're going to do something, make sure you do something that where you can feed off your last career,
Mm.
use your strengths. And I thought about, an actor. An actor is a professional in presence. I mean, that's what we learn. We know about how to communicate in terms of body, voice, body language and voice, the verbal and the nonverbal. Actors understand storytelling. Well, writers, directors, and actors, that's our job. We understand storytelling, and storytelling is so important in all walks of life. And also the ability to manage emotion. So actors, if you're an actor like I am, it's more sort of method style. You don't actually immerse yourself in a character. You find the character in yourself. And
Mm.
so when I'm playing a character, no matter how diverse all the different characters that I play, I find that essence of that person in myself. And so it's an incredible study of who you are and how you express yourself and what's possible. And so it's natural that I would then move into an area where I'm helping leaders express themselves. And ultimately, even though I had 15 years of guilt for quitting my destiny, I've now found it again. And I
Mm.
found it again because I'm doing almost the same thing, but I'm helping leaders express themselves in a way that makes a positive impact on the world around them. And for me, that's really meaningful. And the authenticity factor in that is so important, I think.
Yeah, I like that. So what's interesting, you stated this, I think it's interesting to note, and we've talked about it with other guests, is that you found a new passion, you found a new purpose. And I
Yep.
think that, as we've talked to other guests that have been on the show talking about how, sometimes when we make a transition, we have a hard time finding that purpose. But when I left the military, it was a great example. Like I didn't know when you achieve all your dreams at 24 years old, what do you do next? So finding that next purpose, it was really hard for me. And when I found it, it was just everything came together when I found that purpose. So it sounds like you made a shift and made a change, and you went in a direction, but eventually you found something that really you're really satisfied by that.
Yeah, this is so important. Purpose is so important. I mean, if we get kind of philosophical for a moment, we often ask ourselves, we look up at the dark night, the stars, and you say to yourself, what is the meaning of all this?
Yeah.
What is the meaning of life? I think personally, I think it's the wrong question. I think the right question is, what's the meaning of my life?
Yeah.
Has my life got meaning? And even though thought I was living my destiny, I looked back and I realized actually only a fraction of it was meaningful.
Mm.
And in the end, you to be powerful, whether you want to be a powerful presenter or a great leader or good at anything, the fuel that drives that achievement comes from your sense of meaning, from your sense of purpose. What are you trying to? How are you making the world a more a better place than you found it? And it really is not just in the research, but in my experience working with CEOs and that you know and people who've achieved greatly, that this is a really core part of who they are,
Mm.
and I think a core part of communication authenticity as well.
Mm. Interesting. So we're going to get into that, but let's just why do people seek you out? What when they come to find you, what are they trying to fix? What are they hoping to improve in
Yeah.
their skill set when they seek you out?
Yeah, well, in the early days, it was probably, I've got a presentation, I don't know what to do with my
Mm.
hands, or
Right.
I'm feeling nervous. How do I get over that? Or I get a sore throat when I'm trying to speak to the back of the hall. But now it's more. Usually it's aspirational. So there's a point in time where, let's say you're a subject matter expert, you're in a large organization. Eventually your expertise gets you to say senior manager level or something, and you hit this ceiling where your expertise has been great for you to get you to that point. But what the executive leadership are asking of you now is, because they see potential in you, is to sort of relinquish that expertise and become a team leader, and therefore, be a person who's good at building relationships. And for technical people especially, this is a whole new world.
Yeah.
So 50%, I would say, of the people I work with are highly technical, and they just haven't, I guess, over time, that hasn't been their focus. And so they want to know how to build relationships, how to connect with people, how to be commanding. And then there's of course, the next level of people who are aspiring to CEO-ship, or they are C-suite, and they need to connect with other executives and have a sense of gravitas. They want to be better storytellers, or they want to be able to influence people in lots of different environments, but especially at an executive level. So that's some of the reasons why people call me, or the media. They might need to deal with the media, which is another problem altogether.
Oh yeah. I actually went through some training in that when I was in my corporate life, which was very powerful and very good training, where they actually brought camera crews in. They put cameras on our face, and it was really good stuff. And it was to deal with communicating during a crisis, and it was good stuff. Really good training. So
awesome.
It was fun experience, for at least for me, because what do you like most people. Like I was typically like most people, I froze when the camera went in my face. I'm not used to that.
Absolutely, we freeze. I mean, I don't now, but that's only because of huge amount of practice, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's intimidating. Yeah,
yeah, it is very intimidating.
So let's talk a little bit about leadership communication. So and you're working with leaders, helping them to connect better. So how can leaders, in your opinion, and what you do to help people, how can they command attention, connect with people, and really, as part of the role of leadership is to motivate them for action? How does leadership communication play in that?
Okay, so first of all, you've clarified what actually it takes: commanding, connecting, and compelling, really. So commanding attention is about, being in command is about commanding attention, but it's also about commanding the space you're in. It could be the physical space, but also the knowledge space. So commanding attention is one aspect, and it's very important to give you the power that people are then going to respect. The next level is connecting with people, and we really, if you could divide it into two, it's speaking their language, or getting them to talk, of course, is a good way to connect with people. And the other side of connecting with people, and probably the most important, is about connecting with them emotionally. And the key skill of any great leader eventually will come down to this one thing: being able to manage mood in yourself and other people, and that's really key. So that's connecting is critical. The next part, being compelling, is putting together a really good argument, having good evidence, making it methodical and logical, and leading to a clear conclusion and call to action. But then also being able to take people. So the other side, I guess, of being compelling and motivating is, and the critical element of it, is being able to take people from where they're at emotionally, and then to a place you need them to be in order to deliver on the goals or the vision. So this is a really clear picture of what a leader, or a leader while communicating, needs to be.
It's almost three different skill sets, it sounds like, because one is when you say commanding presence. So it might be you're on stage, you might be doing a presentation, you might just be in a room where you have to, where you're the only one speaking typically, right? And then when this connecting, now you're talking about connecting emotionally, it's a back and forth dialogue, it's active listening, there's a whole nother side of that. And then it's the other, then directing people and trying to, motivate them to the place you want them to go. That's a whole nother set of, it's almost like there's three different elements then in their skills in each one of those areas.
Absolutely. There's look, it's so complex. Human behavior and interaction is so complex, and the problem is with, in fact, look, I've been in the industry of teaching, coaching, training in communication skills, and a large part of that is presentation skills. And personally, I think that most presentation skills training is actually working, will actually destroy your authenticity as opposed to build it up. And I think that, you know, your power comes from who you are. You already know how to gesture, right? So you knew how to gesture, how to use any gesture you wanted. You could be incredibly expressive by the time you're 3 or 4 years old. And if you're saying to me that I freeze up and I don't know how to use, I don't know what to do with my hands when I present, it's not a gesture problem. It's not a gesture problem. You have nerves that are freezing you up. And unfortunately, what you get in most training is you get this really superficial response, which is, oh, well, you should use this gesture because this is the most common gesture on TED Talks. Or make sure your chin is level with the floor, or stand still, stop waving your hands around, or slow down. And we get these pieces of advice that may have good intention, but in fact, all they do is work toward making us less authentic, literally less authentic.
Yeah, because you're not yourself.
Yeah.
You're being what people tell you to be.
Yeah, you're being this like kind of idealistic version of a presenter or a leader.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to do that in the Middle Ages. There were pamphlets, because they didn't have books then, pamphlets that showed people's gestures. You know, if you were an actor and you wanted to play a bad guy, this is what a bad guy looked like. This is what the gestures were. So you played that and it represented the bad guy. And there's still, you know, you can go on Google now and look up presenting, and you'll find people telling you what gestures to use when. You'll tell them, they'll tell you, you know, you need to never gesture above your shoulders, you know, keep it within this particular zone. You know, and there's all this crazy stuff out there that absolutely flies in the face of authenticity and works against it. I mean, sorry, go on.
I was just thinking, you know, as a writer, I had to find my voice, you know, to write books. I had to find how I wanted to talk in my books, how I wanted to write my books. It took me a while to find my voice. And imagine the same thing on stage. It's finding your voice, right? And so it's taking maybe feedback, you know, like the best ideas, but it's like finding what's your authentic voice when you're on stage. Is that a lot of it?
That is so true. That is all of it. Is finding, you know, I think you find yourself in others, to be honest. It's this outward expression of who you are for an important, you have a strong intention. So the thing that's wrong with this form of training where you're told what to do is that authenticity is a massively complex thing. I mean, you've got many behaviors that go into every single interaction. I mean, just in your, so you've got your energy in your voice, your body language, your eye contact, your content, and your words, and your appearance, and all these different aspects of it. And then that goes into huge complexity. I mean, even your voice, you just think about the various aspects of your voice that have meaning and will make a difference and an impact and create perceptions of you in the minds of others. You have power, tone, range, articulation, emphasis, pace, pause, rhythm, energy. I mean, 9 different aspects just to your voice that combine in their own unique way to make you. Yeah. And someone says, oh, you need to slow down. Or you talk like this, or you need to smile when you present. I mean, you know, and so instead what I do as a coach and how I help people be authentic is I find triggers. So I find a trigger that brings the best of you out, because I believe that almost everybody is capable of being charismatic. And if I find the right trigger, then you will find that aspect of yourself that you need to be in the moment. So a really simple trigger, okay, is energy. So if you literally double your energy, so you close the door, you stand up, you imagine an audience there, and you double your normal energy. You jump around, you know, you talk with great enthusiasm, you just act that out physically. And what'll happen is you'll find a lot of authentic expressions coming through that. So, you know, the triggers are important, whether they're a physical trigger or there are what if trigger. So imagine if I could be like this, and you imagine yourself or what you could be, or a memory trigger. Actually, I'll tell you a really interesting story about triggers and someone changing. So I was asked to work with a managing director of a large investment bank in Australia. So actually, he was the CEO of this bank, and they said to me, "I want you to work with Chris because he's too nice."
Interesting.
He's too nice. You can imagine that in an investment bank. He's just always nice and bland, and we need him to be powerful and to lead. And so I met with him, and we talked about all these different behaviors, and we practiced, and we did a whole lot of things to try and get him to express himself more in a more commanding way. And eventually, and it wasn't working, but I have a method, I have a process that leads me eventually to helping them become authentic and powerful at call. But eventually I got to this point where I thought, I can't find his command. I can't find his sense of command. He'll get it for a moment and then it will disappear. And so I decided I asked him, where in his life does he feel like he's in command? And he says, when I'm sailing my boat in the sunset races on the harbor.
There you go.
And he said, do you want to come out one day? I said, yes. So I went on his boat, and it was one of the scariest things I've ever been in, is these really vicious races they have on the harbor with these huge boats. I mean, it's dangerous and scary. And I watched Chris, and I saw a leader.
Yeah.
This guy was in total command of that boat. He was a brilliant helmsman. And I'd found my leader. Yeah. And I said, Chris, well, this is command.
Yeah.
What does it look like? How does it feel when you're in command? All we need to do is we need to bring this into your work environment. This is you. This is an element of you that's really critical and powerful. That's you. And so that was the trigger that eventually got him to be more commanding.
Interesting. So it is his authentic voice. It's just he had a hard time expressing it, but you had to put him in an environment where it came out, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of I guess fault here from how we learn to communicate. We learn to stand on stage and hold our hands and close together and only use gestures every now and then because they're very distracting if you use gestures. They're just like really old-fashioned ways of teaching people to communicate.
Yeah.
But you would know as a veteran when the proverbial hits the fan and you're in action or you're in a difficult situation, all those presentation techniques go out the window, right?
Yeah.
You must connect, you must command, and you must compel that person to act, and you can because you're capable of it.
Interesting. I love that. I think it's good for people to hear that, because some that are listening in may say, well, I'm an introvert, or I'm an engineer, and I'm an accountant. I'm not comfortable on stage. I'm not that charismatic leader. But I've always found that people are often, there are parts of their life, like you said, this guy in his boat, there are parts of their lives where they are in command, and when they have that, and when they are an extrovert, if you will, in their field of study or things that they're really passionate about. Maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's something outside of work, but you tend to find that. And I think that I love that you're saying this is to tap into what the real you, but the you that is that person that is more commanding. I really like that. I have a question for you. Charismatic leadership. Now, sometimes charismatic leadership is thought of in a bad light, like maybe the TV evangelist that's trying to take your money, right? This charismatic leader or a cult leader or someone like that. So explain what you mean by charismatic leadership.
So to me, charismatic leadership is bringing people with you. Behind a vision, and it's neither good nor bad. It's like we I don't know, I can't think of a better word than anthropomorphize, but it's like we personalize things that are not personal.
Right.
Charisma is neither good nor bad. It's like power. Power is neither good nor bad.
Okay.
Power doesn't corrupt. People corrupt power. In every relationship, in fact, you and I talking right now, we're exchanging power. You are listening to me and enjoying what I have to say, and then you are giving me the and then you take the power, right, to tell your story, and then you give it away to me. So it's the same thing with charisma. I'll tell you. So charisma is in everybody, and it's possible. Charisma is about having a dynamic personality, the type of personality and skills that enable you to bring people with you, and it's probably learned. In fact, I believe it's not a gift. It's a choice. So I'll give you an example. So I'm working. Here's a bit of a name drop, but I'm working with. I was working with Russell Crowe at one point on a script. We were improvising a script for a director and sort of filling out the characters, and it just Russell Crowe and I. For those who don't know, he's an Academy Award-winning actor, Gladiator, etc. Yeah. Anyway, so we're walking down after work towards a bar where there's a pool table, and no one wants to talk to him. Because he's a cranky-looking guy. Basically, he's a very, very introverted, and he pushes people away just by his demeanor. And anyway, he's there. He is playing pool, and I'm watching. We're both actors at that point, and I'm kind of musing on what actors are, you know. And I look at him, and I think, this guy I'm looking at now. You take away the superstar aspect of him. He's got no charisma.
Yeah.
Like none. I mean, you would forget him. He would have been a fantastic spy. You know, you'd absolutely forget him if you'd met him briefly and then walked away.
Huh.
And then you imagine a different situation. Let's take a different situation. Let's say you're an executive producer. You got your team in there and you're looking at the next lead actor for your movie. And Russell Crowe walks in the door. Now, it's a whole different story. Russell Crowe walks in the door at that point and the atmosphere changes. It's not just that he's got presence. He changes the atmosphere. He walks in and people feel good. He looks you in the eye, he'll shake your hand, and he'll forge a quick personal relationship with you. Not just with you, but every single person in the room. They feel charmed in a really authentic way. And when he speaks, you listen, because he speaks with conviction. He'll tell stories that are relatable to each person in the room. And in fact, when he's on set, Russell Crowe is a leader. He's a truly good leader. I mean, he will create a kind of I'll follow you anywhere loyalty with people on set. So like any great leader, this actor who was, you know, introverted one minute and then suddenly extroverted the next, has a kind of aura of warmth and authenticity with everybody from the person at the front desk to the CEO. This person is the same person. I mean, you could say, well, who is Russell Crowe? And I would say he's everything. He's anything. He's infinite possibilities, because every action you take in life, every single step you take is a choice. You can, as Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, if we're going to talk about meaning, it's that great book, he says, every person, your emotions are a choice. No matter what the circumstances, you can choose how you want to feel in any given circumstance. So it's the last of the human freedoms. So Russell Crowe can be whatever he needs to be in the moment. And it's totally authentic. It's just a different aspect of him. So charisma is not a gift, it's a choice.
I love that you say that. And I think it relates well to acting. And I always say that, you know, as leaders, we're on stage, you know, and what I mean by that is everyone's watching us. You know, I ran this is my 9th manufacturing company I've run. So I run a lot of manufacturing company where I'm the senior guy. I'm the only guy on site that's where I don't have any boss, right? So I'm the corner office guy. And I can tell you from doing that for 30 years, every eye's on me all the time, right? They know when I show up, when I leave, if I'm angry, if I'm irritated, they see, they're watching me all the time. I'm on stage. I literally use that analogy. I'm on stage all the time, you know, and I think I don't think that leaders recognize that they're on stage. I think that they think, I'm just going to do my thing. But your
Yeah, that's
thing
right.
is you're on stage and everyone's watching you. You have to know that. And I think I learned that in my Navy days, because the captain, we always watched what the captain was doing, and his emotions affected the rest of us. Right. And I just
Yeah.
think that I think I took that away and say, I'm the captain of this ship, and I know I'm responsible for these people. And, you've got to act a certain way when you're on stage, and you're not being inauthentic, but
Mm.
you know that every eye's on you, and everything you say is important to get to where you're trying to get to with your team.
Yeah, that's such a great insight. I imagine you'd be a really, really good leader. You're a positive person. You're a nice guy, but there's a sense about you that you really are in command. But you know what? There's a really strong psychological backing for what you're saying. I mean, this is not a superficial thing. This is not just about having these superficial people skills where you walk around smiling all the time. That's not important. That is not important. It's not about smile plastering on a smile. This has got to be authentic.
Yeah.
And the reflection of the people to the leader is such an important aspect to great leadership. And actually how that happens is if you and I are having a conversation now, but let's say we're face to face. It probably works a little better face to face, but it does work on video. Let's say you and I meet and we don't know each other from Adam, and we start talking. The first thing we'll do is we'll look for something in common. Right.
Yeah.
I'll find out you're a veteran, or I've listened to one of your podcasts, and I'll say, I really respect veterans because as an actor, I've been in war movies, and I know I could never, ever possibly empathize with your situation, but I've had a glimpse into how the chaos of a war situation, or this, and I have huge respect for you. So we would find some sort of common ground, and we can't help it. Every human being will search, when they meet another human being, will search for common ground if they're locked in a room by themselves. The next thing that happens is we start copying each other. It's called motor mimicry. Now, we can't help it. When I look you in the eyes and you look at me and you start telling stories and I'm telling stories, we start to copy the way little facial expressions, our movements, and this is called motor mimicry. Now, that motor mimicry then creates a response in your brain, or the emotional part of your response, and then this is called emotional contagion. So I literally, from the mimicry of you, I catch your emotion. So we're now expressing the same or feeling the same emotions as we speak.
Yeah.
And I'll start acting like you and you'll start acting like me. Now, you imagine that on a large scale. What it requires from the leader is not a poker face or a cranky face. I mean, Daniel Goleman will cite so many examples. He's probably one of the great psychologists in emotional intelligence. Will cite a lot of research that talks about, cranky face doesn't work. A poker face doesn't create emotional contagion. Yep. What does create emotional contagion is you being expressive. Right? So for good or bad. So let's take the good one, which is positively expressive. It doesn't mean you're happy all the time. Right? It just means that you have a dynamic range of expression, and you're expressing yourself in a positive and forward-thinking way, and you have purpose. And as you walk the facility, people see you, and they start acting like you and talking like you and becoming like you. The interesting thing is that this emotional contagion that happens in an organization that's triggered by the leader actually also gives other people to be their own expressive self. It's not like you're creating drones. It's actually you're creating people who now have permission to be powerful and interesting.
Yeah.
And
I like what you
themselves.
just said, that you're giving them permission to be themselves. Yeah. And to be their expressive self. Yeah. I like that.
And it's such an amazing subject. The whole subject of charisma, and it's unfortunate that it's maybe, I don't know, out of fashion being charismatic, but charisma doesn't necessarily mean you're an extrovert. I mean, I have a client who's a managing partner of a law firm, and he's not an extrovert at all. He's a kind, humble, consultative leader. He doesn't go around like the president shaking hands and flashing his white teeth. but he will go down to the floor where all these people are sitting, and he'll just sit down and chat with people. He'll connect with them.
Yeah.
He will always consult his partnership before making huge decisions. He'll be decisive when he needs to be, and he'll be commanding when he needs to be. He doesn't. You don't have to be an extrovert to be a great leader, because it's too simplistic to think that. You have everything that's possible. You have introversion and extroversion possible. It's possible within you to be either.
I like that. I know for my career, I probably was more of an introvert. I mean, I studied engineering and what have you, but as soon as I had my first plant at 32 years old, it was like, I knew I was on stage. It was definitely the feeling of all those eyes on me that I over time, I just became an extrovert. I just like being around people. I enjoy the messiness of people and the interesting sides of people and the strange opinions and I love every part of that. So for me, I enjoy being around people and learning about their quirks, their hangups, their phobias, their conspiracy theories. I just think people are interesting. So for me, I think I probably became an introvert or an extrovert just from being around so many people for so long that I just enjoy it now. I get energy from it.
Yeah, I love the way you say the messiness of people.
Yeah.
As I get older, I think, we are all vulnerable. We've all made big mistakes. We've all failed. We've fallen over. We're not perfect. This is what the human is. And the way you're describing that, I think, is really enlightening, would be enlightening for people, because they're saying, well, he's a leader and he can be real. He can be, you don't connect with people by being perfect. That's not actually what connects with people. Right. What connects with people is your vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
The fact that you're real, and when someone sees you in a leadership position, and you tell a story about when you've failed, not when you were a hero, when you failed, and that's what inspires people. I mean, I've worked with Cisco Systems for many years, and at the highest level, and all through the organization, I've really enjoyed this relationship with this organization. And seeing John Chambers take the business from $70 million business to a 50-something billion dollar business. This leader is one of the most charismatic people I've ever come across, I've ever met. And he did a speech in Hawaii once, where he talked about the trials of this employee this year. He said this employee was so depressed he was struggling to get out of bed in the morning, and he was questioning his, whether he was actually capable of doing his job. And eventually he picked himself up, and he was, one day at a time, he kind of got through life, and he got through the year, and he pushed himself, and he just hung on. Anyway, he did this speech about this employee, and then at the end, he said to the audience, "Oh, by the way, that employee's name was John Chambers." And the impact, I remember the impact of the over 40,000 people around the globe of Cisco. The impact could be heard through every corridor, across every border, in meeting rooms all throughout Cisco. People were telling that story. He's just like us. That's how I feel. And the palpable connection that he made with his organization at that point was just something I'll never forget. Yeah. And that wasn't about, I became the hero. It was about understanding and empathy, and that we don't have to be perfect. And in a really practical way, when you're presenting on stage, it's really critical you connect. You look at a person in the eye and you connect with them one at a time. Yep. Because that's going to create that engagement, that emotional contagion. If you just scan the crowd and you stand there and you use the gestures you were told, and you stop moving because you've been told you need to stop moving, or you stop moving your hands because they said stop waving your hands because it's distracting. You walk around like that, you're not going to connect. Yeah. You're not going to connect. You've got to, you've got to find a way to be who you are. and to do that within a certain time frame, but then also nail it within that time frame. and that's the skill, you know.
I love it. I love it. Chris, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Speaking about timing, we're just at the end here now, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this. How can people find out more if they're listening to you and they're like, wow, I really need some help in this area. I really need some coaching in this area. How can people find out about you? Where can they go to learn more about you and your services?
Well, you know, I could talk with you for a long time. I don't know whether you could talk with you. You'd probably eventually want to get rid of this loser who keeps asking you questions.
I'm enjoying it so much, but I'm also looking at the time.
I don't think we've touched the service. But anyway, how to connect with me is probably the best way. I mean, you could go on my website, cmcglobal.com.au. So there's another CMC Global. So it's got to be .com.au. It's the Australian CMC Global. And you'll find Chris Morsley, Morsley, executive coach. The other way to connect with me, and probably one of the best ways to connect with me, is through LinkedIn. So just look for Chris Morsley in LinkedIn, executive coach in influence and persuasion. There are very few Chris Morsleys in the world for some reason. One of them is retired. Another guy lives in Seattle. And that's about it. But so you will recognize me on LinkedIn. And I also do some tips on each week I do 3 sort of 1-minute tips on Instagram. And that's Chris Morsley, exec coach. So yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Okay, excellent, Chris. We're going to put links in the show notes for those resources. And again, leaders, I hope you took away a lot from this conversation. I know I did. There's a lot of things to think about. You are on stage, whether you like it or not. Even if you're presenting or not presenting, you're on stage. And I think a lot of the things that Chris talked about are things we all have to remember when we're out there talking and interacting with people. Chris, this has been an exciting conversation, and I learned a lot, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
It's been a pleasure and an honor. Actually, it's really hard to say pleasure and an honor. But it has. I need to do my voice exercises before I say that line. But no, honestly, John, been great talking with you, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Reddy saying take care and lead well.